There was a baby on my porch. Not a stroller left by a confused neighbor. Not a delivery gone wrong. A real, living, 3-month-old baby, buckled into a car seat, wrapped in a blanket already soaked from the rain, with a folded note tucked beside her tiny fist. My sister was gone. And when I called my parents in a panic, shaking, standing in my socks on wet concrete, my father said 5 words that changed the entire course of my life. "You're the responsible one, Rachel." That was it. No offer to come over. No panic. No help. What they didn't know, what none of them understood, was that 10 years later, I would walk into a courtroom with a sealed folder that made every one of them go pale. The judge opened it, read for 90 seconds, then looked across the room and asked a question nobody had an answer for. But before I tell you what was inside that folder, and why I finally ran out of mercy, you need to understand everything I survived to get there. Part 1: The night everything changed. It was a freezing November night in suburban Georgia. I was 24 years old, living in a 1-bedroom apartment, teaching English at the local high school, and quietly building a life that was finally starting to feel stable. Then my doorbell rang at 11 p.m. I opened the door expecting, I don't know, a neighbor, a package, anything ordinary. Instead, I found her. She was so small. Dark hair, soft cheeks, eyes closed in sleep, completely unaware that every adult in her life had already failed her. The rain was soaking through her blanket. The porch light flickered over her face like it was trying to keep her warm. I looked left, then right. The street was empty. I picked up the note with fingers that had already gone cold. "Her name is Emma. I cannot do this. You have to. I am sorry." That was everything my sister left behind. No explanation. No phone number. No promise to come back. Just an order wrapped in 3 sentences, and a baby who needed someone to stay. I called my mother first. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. She answered on the 3rd ring, sounding irritated that I had interrupted her evening. When I told her there was a baby on my porch, that my sister Olivia had left her and disappeared, she let out this slow, dry sigh. Like she had been expecting some kind of trouble and was mildly annoyed it had arrived on a school night. Then my father got on the line. "You're the responsible one, Rachel. So you deal with it." I remember staring down at Emma's sleeping face while he said those words. Trying to process that I had just been handed a human being like a problem to route to the most convenient department. She was 3 months old. She was not a problem. She was a baby lying in the rain while every adult who owed her protection looked the other way. I hung up. Called Derek, the man I had been dating for almost 2 years, the person I thought would show up when life got impossible. He asked if I was sure the baby was really my sister's. Then he told me to call social services before I ruined my whole life over somebody else's mistake. I hung up on him too. Grabbed my keys. Drove to the only 24-hour Walmart near my apartment with a baby I had met less than an hour ago, crying in the back seat. I stood in the baby aisle in wet socks and a college sweatshirt, staring at shelves of formula and diapers like they were written in a foreign language. An older employee with silver hair and tired eyes saw my face and quietly helped me pick out everything I needed. I also bought a small stuffed rabbit I couldn't really afford. Because the thought of Emma waking up in my apartment with nothing that belonged to her made my chest hurt in a way I didn't have words for yet. That night, I fed her badly. Changed her clumsily. Built a makeshift crib from a laundry basket lined with clean towels. I didn't sleep. Every sound she made, I sat straight up, By 5:30 a.m., I had called my principal for emergency leave. By 8, I was sitting in a family attorney's office with Emma asleep against my chest. Her name was Erin Cole. She explained temporary guardianship to me in a calm voice that somehow made the terror feel survivable. She told me I could petition the court since my sister had left the child with family and vanished. She told me the process would take time. Then she told me something I wrote down and never forgot. Document everything. Every call. Every text. Every refusal. You will need it. I had no idea how right she was. My parents finally came by a week later. My mother stood in my kitchen in a pressed cardigan, looked at the formula canisters on the counter, and asked whether I had really thought any of this through. My father barely glanced at Emma. Neither of them offered help. Neither of them asked what I needed. They only wanted to know if I had heard from my sister. I had not. After they left, Emma woke up hungry. And while I fed her in the half-dark of my living room, I unfolded the note one more time and read it again. Then I looked down at her tiny fingers wrapped around one of mine and said the first honest thing I had managed since that porch. I don't know what I'm doing. But I know I'm not leaving you. Part 2, The Life I Built. The court gave me temporary guardianship first. Then extended it when my sister failed to appear. And somewhere between the paperwork and the sleepless nights and the pediatric appointments and the first time Emma smiled at me while I sang terrible off-key songs in my kitchen, something shifted. The question stopped being, how long am I doing this? And became, how do I build her a real life? I moved into a small 2-bedroom duplex on the edge of town. The rent was barely manageable. The neighborhood had sidewalks and a decent elementary school 2 streets over. My next-door neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, arrived the first Saturday with a crock-pot full of chicken soup and a bag of baby blankets her daughter no longer needed. She taught me the difference between a fussy cry and a sick cry. She taught me how to laugh instead of collapse when I was running on 3 hours of sleep and Emma had banana in my hair. At school, coworkers left diapers in my mailbox and grocery gift cards in my desk drawer with no note attached. The people who were supposed to be my family watched from a distance. The people who owed me nothing kept me going. Those years were expensive in every way. I said no to extra committees that might have helped my career. I sold the gold necklace Derek had given me and used the money for an unexpired car seat. I learned to stretch chicken, rice, and frozen vegetables across 3 dinners. And I watched Emma grow. Thick, dark hair that never stayed in a ponytail. Huge, serious eyes that made strangers smile at her in grocery lines. At 18 months, she started calling me Rob because Rachel was too hard. At 2, without any warning, she called me Mama while I was wiping applesauce off her chin. I went into the bathroom and cried so hard I sat on the floor. Not because I wanted to replace anyone. Not because I thought blood didn't matter. But because love had a sound now, and it came from her. My parents drifted in and out during those years in the most damaging way possible. Never absent enough to make peace with, never present enough to matter. My mother brought impractical gifts, frilly dresses for a child who spent her days barefoot in the grass, stacking plastic dinosaurs in color order on the rug. My father sat on the edge of the couch and asked whether I had heard from my sister yet, as if that was the only thing about Emma worth discussing. They did not come to her first birthday. Mrs. Thompson did. Along with 3 teachers from my school and the assistant principal who brought cupcakes and laughed when Emma smashed frosting into her own hair. I took photos of every single milestone. Saved everything in a plastic storage box under my bed. Hospital bracelet. First shoes. Birthday candles. drawings from school. The note. Not because I was sentimental by nature. Because something deep in me said, you will need proof one day that this life was real. I just didn't know how soon. By kindergarten, our life felt less like survival and more like a family. Friday nights were homemade pizza and board games. Sunday mornings were pancakes and the park if the weather held. The same lunch packed every school day. The same hand squeeze before she walked into class. The same promise every night. I am here. When she was 6, Emma asked why she didn't have baby pictures with the woman who gave birth to her. I had always known the question was coming. I just hadn't known how much it would hurt. I told her the truth in pieces small enough for a child to carry. I said my sister had been very sick and unable to care for a baby. That Emma had come to me when she was tiny, and I had loved her ever since. Emma listened quietly. Then asked if the woman who gave birth to her would ever come back. I told her I didn't know. She climbed into my lap, rested her head on my shoulder, and said, "It's okay. I already have you." And for a while, for a long while, that felt like the end of the story. It wasn't. Part 3, The Phone Call. Emma was 10 when the past called me back. A Tuesday night in October. Ordinary in the way life becomes ordinary when you work hard enough to build peace out of chaos. Emma was at the kitchen table painting planets for a science project, tongue out in concentration. I was grading essays. My phone lit up with an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I answered, and the voice said my name in a way that made the whole room tilt. Olivia. My sister. Whose voice I hadn't heard in 10 years, but recognized instantly. It sounded older. Steadier. Less reckless. Which somehow made the shock worse. She told me she had been sober for 7 years. She had gone through rehab in Texas, rebuilt her life, married a man named Kyle. She said she had spent years too ashamed to reach out, and that she knew she had no right to ask for anything, but she wanted to see Emma, if I thought that might ever be possible. I stepped out onto the back porch while Emma kept painting Saturn's rings inside. For 5 full minutes, I couldn't speak. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to ask where she had been on every fever night, every first day of school, every birthday that she missed while I stayed. I wanted to tell her that showing up after 10 years and asking to meet the child she abandoned wasn't bravery. It was audacity. But underneath all that rage was a truth I couldn't argue with. Emma had a right to know where she came from. So I didn't say yes. I said I would think about it. The first meeting happened at a botanical garden 6 weeks later, somewhere open, somewhere Emma could move if she felt overwhelmed. Olivia arrived in a cream sweater, healthy, beautiful, trembling slightly at the edges. She no longer looked like the girl who had blown through our family in a trail of bad decisions and borrowed money and slammed doors. She looked like someone who could make strangers believe her. That unsettled me more than if she had shown up broken. Emma stood close to me the whole time, one hand hooked in my sleeve. She called Olivia Aunt Liv on her own. Olivia's eyes filled for a second before she smiled and said that was perfect. The meeting lasted 40 minutes. No one cried. No one made promises. No one used the word mother. For several months, I kept everything supervised, predictable, careful. Emma warmed slowly, the way cautious children do when they have been loved well enough to recognize when something feels off. Then Olivia told me they were moving to Georgia permanently. That Kyle's real estate firm was expanding and she wanted to be part of Emma's life consistently. My stomach tightened. But I had spent 10 years telling myself that if Olivia ever came back healthy and sincere, I would not be the one to slam the door. So I let the visits continue. I let myself hope this story could become something gentler than the one I had survived. That hope lasted until the dinner at my parents' house. Part 4: The Ambush. I should have known the second I walked in and saw Olivia and Kyle already seated like honored guests in my mother's dining room. This wasn't a family dinner. This was a plan. The good dishes were out, the ones my mother only used when she wanted a performance of family instead of the real thing. Emma sat beside me, swinging her feet, excited because she thought this was finally everyone choosing to act like people who loved each other. Kyle was polished in a way that made me tired on sight. Clean handshake. Expensive watch. Perfect teeth. Every comment just slightly too practiced. Dinner started politely enough. Then, somewhere between the salad and the mashed potatoes, Kyle placed his napkin on the table and said they had been thinking seriously about what was best for Emma going forward. My fork went still. Olivia looked nervous but not surprised. My mother looked almost pleased. Kyle spoke first, in that smooth, courtroom-ready voice, saying they now had the stability, the home, and the resources to give Emma the life she deserved. That Olivia wanted the chance to be Emma's real mother. I remember the exact sound my chair made scraping the floor when I pushed back from the table. I kept my voice low because Emma was right there. But I asked the only question that mattered. "Are you saying you want to take her from me?" Olivia said, "Not take." As if vocabulary could make betrayal smaller. She said reunite. My father, who had barely looked at Emma in 10 years, finally spoke up. He said Emma belonged with her biological mother now that she was fit. My mother, who had left me standing on a porch with a baby in the rain, had the nerve to say I had done a wonderful job, but that temporary arrangements were never supposed to last forever. Temporary. 10 years. Every sleepless night. Every parent conference, every doctor visit, every sacrifice, every promise, reduced to temporary by the woman who had handed me the responsibility with a phone call and then gone back to her evening. Emma had gone perfectly still beside me. Children always know when a room turns dangerous, even when they don't understand why. I told them the conversation was over. Kyle said maybe it didn't have to be ugly if I accepted what was inevitable. I stood up and told Emma to get her coat. On the drive home, she sat in the back seat hugging herself. Then, in a small voice, "Grandma said I might live with Aunt Liv. Is that true?" I pulled over under a streetlight because I couldn't drive with tears in my eyes and her voice shaking behind me. I turned around and told her no one was taking her anywhere. That night, she had a nightmare and woke up calling for me. While I held her in the dark, I knew with absolute clarity that whatever small mercy I had tried to leave room for, it was over. Part 5: The Machine Behind the Curtain. 3 weeks later, I was served. Olivia had filed for custody with Kyle's help and my parents' full support. The petition described me as a controlling relative who had exploited a family crisis to keep a child away from her biological mother. It claimed I had interfered with contact, alienated Emma, shut out extended family. I read it twice because the first time my brain wouldn't process the level of dishonesty. Then I opened the attached affidavit and found my parents' sworn statements repeating every lie under oath. My mother said I had always been possessive of Emma and resistant to family involvement. My father said Olivia had tried repeatedly to reconnect over the years, and that I had blocked every attempt. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at those pages while Emma did spelling homework in the next room. Something inside me hardened in a way I don't think will ever fully soften. The deepest wound was not the lawsuit. It was the theft of reality. They were trying to erase 10 years and replace them with a version where I was the villain, because that was easier than admitting what they had actually done. Erin Cole took the case before I finished my first sentence. She read the filing, looked up at me, and said, "They're counting on biology and optics. We're going to answer with facts." So that is what we did. School records with my name on every line. Medical forms. Emergency contact sheets. Every birthday invitation my parents had ignored. Every text message where Olivia was absent because she had vanished. 10 years of documented motherhood, stacked into evidence that no one thinks to preserve until they are forced to defend it. But then came the worst revelation of all. During a tense phone call with my mother, I demanded to know when they had started speaking to Olivia again. My father cut in and admitted it had been 4 years. 4 years. They had known where my sister was. They had known she was sober, remarried, rebuilding her life. They had watched me raise Emma with one hand tied behind my back. And said nothing. They had let me keep believing she was simply gone. And now they wanted a judge to believe I had kept them apart. Erin brought in a private investigator, a former county detective named Mason Pike, who spoke in flat sentences and noticed what other people missed. At first, I thought we were just looking for holes in their version of events. What we found was a machine. Kyle had not simply helped Olivia reconnect with Emma out of love or moral conviction. He had been methodically researching, subscribing to people search databases, pulling background traces, building timelines around Emma's birth, trying to identify a man who had recently sold a logistics company and inherited significant money from an estate. A man whose age and location matched one of my sister's old circles. The implication hit me like cold water. If Olivia regained custody and established paternity, Emma became a bridge to child support, trust claims, financial leverage. Maybe not all legal. Certainly not all moral. But enough to explain why people who had missed 10 years of a child's life suddenly felt such burning urgency. Mason also found that Kyle's finances were nothing like the picture he'd painted. The house was highly leveraged. His business was slipping. There were debts, late payments, and a pressure I could practically smell through the paperwork. The image of the stable, polished provider was just that. An image. Then there were the messages. Texts between Olivia, Kyle, and my mother. Talking about optics. About how a judge might see me as unstable because I was single and worked in education, code for less money, easier to frame as inadequate. In one message, Kyle wrote, "Once custody is restored, the rest becomes easier." In another, my mother replied, "Rachel will fight, but she always folds when it gets ugly." I read that line 3 times. She had watched me survive everything they refused to help with. And she still believed I would break on command. What none of them understood was that motherhood had burned the fear out of me a long time ago. Emma, meanwhile, was carrying stress no child should carry. She started chewing the sleeves of her sweaters. Her teacher called because she had cried at school after a classmate said he was moving, and Emma panicked that people could just decide your home was somewhere else without asking you. I got her into therapy immediately. Her therapist later told me Emma's greatest fear wasn't Olivia. It was being treated like she had no say in her own life. That sentence still hurts. Because it meant the adults around her had already taught her that lesson. Then came the detail that sealed everything. Mason uncovered a private exchange where Kyle, frustrated by how slowly the legal process was moving, wrote that Emma was already old enough to adapt and would get over it once they had the advantages in place. Get over it. That was how he described removing a 10-year-old from the only parent she had ever known. Not as a trauma. Not as a heartbreak. As an inconvenience on the way to a payout. Aaron read that message, closed the file, and said, "This is what wins." Not because it's dramatic, because it proves they are not thinking about her as a child. They are thinking about her as an outcome. Part 6, The Folder. The night before court, Emma sat on my bed in pajamas and asked what happened if somebody in a nice suit lied better than someone telling the truth. I told her the truth was heavier. That lies could sparkle for a while, but they couldn't carry weight forever. She looked at my face very carefully. Then asked if I was scared. I said yes, because I wanted at least one adult in her life to be honest with her. She climbed into my lap even though she was getting too big for it. "I'm scared too," she said. "But I know you don't leave." I didn't sleep much that night. After midnight, I stood at the kitchen counter in the quiet house, one hand resting on the sealed folder. I had assembled it over weeks. Financial records. Database search logs showing Kyle's investigation. Property documents proving the debt. The message chain between all three conspirators. My parents' sworn statements set beside texts proving they had lied under oath. And Kyle's message about Emma getting over it once the advantages were in place. 10 years earlier, I had stood in a different kitchen, warming formula for a baby left on my porch in the rain. Now I was standing there with enough evidence to expose everyone who had tried to rewrite the story of her life for profit, vanity, and convenience. I touched the edge of the folder. Said the words out loud for the first time. No mercy. Part 7, The Courtroom. Across from us, Olivia and Kyle, dressed like a brochure for respectable adulthood. My parents behind them. My mother wouldn't look at me. My father had that contained, cornered anger that men wear when they know it's over but haven't accepted it yet. Judge Mercer was in his 60s. The kind of face that gave nothing away until he wanted it to. Olivia testified first. She spoke about addiction, shame, recovery, and second chances. She cried at exactly the right moments. She talked about wanting to make up for lost time. Kyle testified next. He spoke about opportunity, better neighborhoods, better financial outlook, better future, the same words cycling through in different configurations, as if childhood were something you could upgrade with a better zip code. My parents followed. My mother claimed I had always kept family at a distance. My father said Olivia had tried to reconnect for years and I had blocked every attempt. If I hadn't known them, I might have believed them too. Then our side began. Emma's teacher testified that I had attended every conference, answered every concern, shown up for Emma in all the ordinary ways that reveal real parenting. Her therapist testified that Emma identified me as her mother in the only way that matters psychologically, and that removing her from my care would likely create significant emotional harm. Aaron entered record after record. 10 years of continuity. School forms. Medical records. Emergency contacts. Dental appointments. Summer camp registrations. The entire paperwork of a life built together. Then I took the stand. I didn't perform. I didn't cry on cue. I told the truth plainly. I said that when Emma came to me, she was not a symbol, a lesson, or a burden. She was a baby. I said I hadn't planned for motherhood, but I'd done it anyway because a child needed someone to stay. I described the fevers. The homework. The budget nights. The soccer practices. The science fairs. The bedtime talks. The moment she first called me mama. The panic attacks after the custody petition was filed, and the night Emma asked whether meeting her biological mother meant I would stop being her mom. Then I said the only line I had prepared. There are 1,000 ways to abandon a child. There is only one way to truly raise one. You stay. Judge Mercer listened without interrupting. Then Erin asked permission to submit additional evidence under seal. She walked the folder to the bailiff. The room changed the moment he opened it. He read for 90 seconds. Maybe less. It felt much longer. Then he looked at me. Then at Olivia. Then at Kyle. Then at my parents. Do they even know what you have here? He asked me. No, Your Honor, I said. His eyes narrowed slightly. Good. What followed was not loud. But it was devastating. He questioned Kyle about the database searches tracing Emma's biological father. Kyle tried to frame it as responsible due diligence. The judge pressed until the answer collapsed under its own polish. He questioned Olivia about the message chain and whether she understood the financial implications of establishing paternity after regaining custody. She started crying again, but it didn't land the same way this time. He turned to my parents and held their sworn affidavit beside the documented text messages proving they had known Olivia's location for 4 years. My father tried to explain they had only wanted privacy for Olivia during her recovery. Judge Mercer cut him off and asked whether privacy required false statements under oath. Nobody answered that. Then Erin directed the court to Kyle's message. The one about Emma getting over it once they had the advantages in place. The judge read the line twice in silence. Then looked up. This child is not leverage. She is not a strategy. She is not a prize to be transferred to improve anyone's financial or personal image. That was the moment the story they had built was dead. His ruling came after a recess that felt like half a lifetime. Petition for custody, denied. Existing guardianship to remain in force, with strengthened legal standing in my favor. Any future contact from Olivia to be supervised and phased only according to Emma's comfort and her therapist's recommendation. A formal note regarding the credibility issues presented by the petitioners, and an admonishment regarding the misleading testimony that had been offered under oath. Kyle looked furious. My mother looked stunned. My father stared straight ahead, as if he could outstare humiliation. Olivia cried, real tears this time, I think. Maybe for the fantasy Kyle had built around her. Maybe even for Emma. I don't know. Part 8, Coming Home. When I picked Emma up from Mrs. Thompson's house that afternoon, she searched my face before saying a single word. I knelt down in the driveway. You're coming home with me, I told her. Nothing changes. She burst into tears and threw herself into my arms so hard I almost fell backward. You promised, she kept saying. You promised. That night, we ate takeout pizza on the living room floor and watched the dumbest baking show we could find, because after months of fear, ordinary joy felt absolutely holy. The fallout came fast. Olivia left Kyle within the year. Maybe because the truth had finally stripped him of his charm. Maybe because once the financial angle was gone, so was most of his interest in the project. My parents wanted to pretend that time alone could reset everything. I did something I should have done years earlier. I set boundaries and kept them. No unsupervised time. No rewriting history. No speaking to Emma about blood obligation or who her real family was. Access became a privilege, not a right. Whether they liked it was no longer my problem. Emma stayed in therapy for a while. Slowly, the fear eased. She got louder again. Funnier again. Herself again. On her 11th birthday, she handed me a card she had made from folded construction paper with markers that were running low on ink. On the front, she had drawn two figures standing under one roof in the rain. Inside, in her handwriting: "To my mom who chose me every day. Thank you for staying." I kept that card in the same box as the hospital bracelet, the first shoes, and the note that started everything. Not because the pain still owns me. Because the truth matters. The truth. Biology can start a story. It cannot finish one. Love is not what people claim when they want something from a child. Love is the grocery runs at midnight. The school pickups. The doctor forms. The rent paid on time. The safe place kept warm. The promise repeated until a scared child finally believes it. Love is responsibility with tenderness. Love is staying when staying costs you. My parents thought family was a title they could reclaim whenever it became convenient. Kyle thought a child was an asset that could be repositioned for financial gain. My sister let someone else build a plan around a little girl who never asked to be anyone's strategy. They were all wrong. Emma is not a debt to be passed around until someone finds her convenient. She is not a tool for redemption, money, or image. She remembers who made her feel safe. And that safety, that ordinary, daily, unremarkable safety, is the most sacred thing one person can give another. I know because I was 24 years old, standing in wet socks on a porch in the rain, looking at a baby I hadn't asked for and had no idea how to raise. And I chose to stay. That single choice became 10 years. 10 years became a family. And no one, not a petition, not a courtroom, not a sealed folder full of other people's lies, could take that away. Because there is only one way to truly raise a child. You show up. You stay. And you never, ever make them wonder if you're coming back.